Welcome. Welcome to a conversation. And you're a part of this conversation. And my partner today for the conversation is Trent Campbell, a photographer for the Addison Independent and all kinds of other artistic expressions. And we're going to talk about photographs, of course. We're going to talk about stories. So I'm going to ask Trent a question about his first camera, or his early camera. Can you tell us that story?
Sure. I had a grandfather who was a mining engineer in northern Minnesota during his career, and when he retired, he took up photography as a very serious hobby, and he kind of introduced me to that hobby, and I would follow him around and take photos with him, and eventually he passed one of his cameras down to me, a better camera than I had. It was a Canon FTB, a real workhorse of a camera. Nothing fancy about it, but very strong and durable. And he gave me a couple lenses with it, and that broadened my scope a little bit, and did a lot of work with him. And he slowly kind of transitioned into real macro photography, taking pictures of tiny bugs and little flowers and things. That didn't excite me as much as it excited him, but I continued to follow him around and work with him a lot, and that's sort of how my interest in photography blossomed.
I had a similar kind of experience with my father, in that he was interested in stamps and had a little stamp business, but I couldn't see the excitement.
Yeah.
And so I never did follow him. But you went with your grandfather. Did he have a dark room? Did he develop his
No,
own?
he shot all color transparencies or color slides.
Okay.
He didn't do any developing or printing himself.
Send that off to
Send it off to Kodak.
Kodak.
Yes.
Which you can't hardly do these days, can
no,
you?
No. Yeah, there'd be a little mailer for your roll of film right to Kodak, and then they'd send it back. So. Yeah.
How about other members of your family? Were they interested in this, or this just your grandfather's activity?
This was just his, and then mine. Yeah.
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 Now, when he introduced you to photography, did he tell stories with pictures, or?
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, he traveled quite a bit in retirement as well, and so he actually lived in Arizona, and would come up to spend the summers with us in Minnesota. And so during his long distance travels, he'd be taking photographs all the time, and so he would come back and get out his little carousel slide projector and show us slides, and he would tell many stories about how he came to take this photo, or any circumstances surrounding that photo. So yes, he definitely he was a storyteller. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, did you become a storyteller early then, in terms of what's the connection between pictures and stories for you?
Well, I guess it's a way of telling a story without having to use words, which I'm not as good at. So I think I fell back on photography. I also got involved in making little movies back then as well, which maybe are even more of a story.
What were your favorite subjects for movies?
Oh, we would make up silly little stories for with kids in the neighborhood. We would, reenact war scenes or detective stories, things like that.
And you were the photographer?
I was behind the camera, yeah.
Behind the camera.
Yeah.
Okay. And was this 8mm?
Yes, 8mm and then super 8mm, yes. Yeah. First started with my father's little Bell and Howell 8mm camera. Yeah.
great. They were great cameras, and
Yeah,
uh,
yeah.
even the box camera in
Yep.
those days. I took a
Did-
trip to Washington D.C.
Yeah.
and I just kept clicking,
Yeah.
and I was surprised at the pictures I got.
Yeah.
You know, it was more than I could hope for.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you've been doing this for a long time then, right?
Well, yeah, that was probably started when I was pre-teenager,
Mm-hmm.
and then as a teenager, I became one of the editors of the school yearbook and
Mm-hmm.
took all the photos for the yearbook and got involved in taking sports photos and then did things just as kind of a freelance photographer now and then. And now I've been with the Addison Independent for 18 years.
18
and a half years, yeah.
Yeah. Well, your name was one of the first names that we learned in this area, because we moved here 17 years ago.
Ah, okay.
And we were in a conversation with someone, and they were talking about one of the photos that they had seen in the local newspaper. I think that was before we even subscribed
Uh-huh.
to the Addison Independent, and so then all of a sudden I started looking for your photographs, and been enjoying them ever since.
And then your wife was in one of my very favorite early photos.
Yes.
Yeah.
You want to tell that story? Or?
Sure. Your wife was a music teacher?
Music teacher.
At what school? I can't remember. What school.
Salisbury.
Salisbury, yes. Yeah. And I don't know if it was an assignment or I just was...
It was first day of school.
Oh, first day of school.
With kindergartners.
Okay, yeah.
And you followed her around.
Uh-huh.
And she was trying to get the children to sing.
Yes.
And she said, "Have you lost your voice?"
Uh-huh.
and as she leaned over, she had her mouth wide open,
yes,
to give her voice.
Yeah.
And that you caught it, right?
Yeah, I was sort of sitting behind a row of kids in their folding chairs, and yeah, she leaned over to one child and big open mouth. And
yeah.
Yeah.
She really appreciated that.
Yeah.
She has. We've had copies of that. We sent copies to other people.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
And that you went into some competitions with that, right?
I think so. Yeah. I think early on, I think I won the Vermont Press Association award for that, maybe. Yeah. That was a favorite. I'm sorry I didn't bring it with me today.
Well,
that was when I was shooting film,
right?
Not digitally, and the archives on film are a little less reliable. So
when did you switch over from film to digital?
So I started at the paper in '98, and I think by late 2000 or 2001, we'd switched to digital. Yeah.
Is there a difference in quality or that you see, or?
Not really. I mean, if you're printing to newsprint, the quality is not so great anyway, so I don't think you see any difference between what I'm shooting digitally today and what I shot on film.
Yeah.
There are certainly different qualities for me taking photos. In the old days, I'd have to roll up some rolls of film and pack up my bag in the morning, and I'd hit the road, and that was what I had. I had 7 rolls of film, 36 exposures each. That was it. Now I can pack several compact flash cards, and I can shoot hundreds and hundreds of pictures on each one. Yeah. So it really frees me up to shoot more, which is a good thing. It does, you do lose a little bit of the magic of the darkroom. So I used to, at the end of the day or the next morning, I'd be in the darkroom processing all those rolls of film, and there's a certain magic in that to see what you ended up with.
Right.
Which is something you miss now. But it is nice to know
right away
on the
what
moment that
Yeah.
you've captured something special. Yeah.
So when I was younger, when we talked about photographs, my family were bad photographers, all of
Yeah.
us.
Yeah.
Remember sitting through too many slideshows where the commentary would say, now if this were just a little bit lighter,
Yeah.
this is what you'd see.
Yeah.
Or if this were just a little bit darker, this is what you'd see. And so I always was looking for a way to escape my family's night when they'd say, okay, we're going to show slides.
Yeah. Yeah.
So the rule of thumb seemed to be, at that time, was if you got 1 or 2 good pictures in 10.
Yeah.
Does that still hold, or is it larger than now?
It depends on the subject. If I'm shooting some kind of athletic event, it might be 2 or 3 or 4 out of 100 that is good, or that I would print.
Well, you have an instinct or ability to capture, I think, the critical moment. How did that come about?
I don't know, just practice, I guess.
Yeah.
And to know what you're looking for and anticipate
Right.
something that you're expecting. Yeah.
That's good. Well, you brought some pictures.
Yes.
And so, shall we look at some of your photos?
Sure, yeah, let's.
Okay. I think we're going to switch over to that.
Okay.
And give you a chance to see the pictures and make some commentary on.
Okay. Yeah, so these are a series of images I put together recently for a class of students out in Whiting, just to sort of look at some interesting photos and some photos that might use techniques that that they might need to learn.
Okay.
So here we're looking at a shot of some people who are about to compete in the demo derby out at Field Days, and they're just sort of milling around waiting their turn, and I thought it made a interesting subject. Here's a therapy dog that was visiting students at Middlebury College during exam week, and provided them with a little respite. And here's an example of capturing the moment, the girl laughing as the dog probably licks at her face. Here's a different angle on a competition at Field Days as well, the dairy showmanship at the big dairy barn. And I just liked the way it seemed like this cow was almost hugging this girl with her ears.
Yeah, that's a fascinating shot.
This was to show some technique to the kids, a long exposure of a ride out at Field Days and the swirling lights, and finding a different way of looking at a subject, transforming it. Similar here with a different ride. Here's a girl working, I think, up at Lincoln School, and just finding a different way to frame her. She was working on a rattan lantern, and so got down very low. And one of the things they always say in photography is if you want to make your photo interesting, get 3 feet lower or 3 feet higher.
Oh, that's interesting. I hadn't heard that.
Yeah. So here I got down real low so I could see her face as she was leaning over something. If I was standing, you wouldn't see her face probably. She'd be leaning over her project. This is a bunch of kids at a Lord of the Rings camp. They all had big giant foam axes and swords and bows and arrows, and they faced off against the bad guys on one side of the field and good on the other, and they yelled charge and all went running off. And I like this because I was right in close, kneeling in the grass right with them, and they just sort of all went charging by and filled the screen.
3 feet lower, right?
That's right, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is the gentleman who was helping to restore and renovate the Catholic Church here in town.
Oh, yes.
He took the Stations of the Cross from the sanctuary and put them into the garage near the church and was restoring them, repainting them. And here is our new town office here in Middlebury before it was completed, while they were still building it. And I just like the silhouette and the reflection, because I guess it had rained, and since there was no windows, the rain came in, and here's a juggler working with a student at the high school during a wellness seminar, I think. And I always forget Wally and Woodhead, or Waldo and Woodhead. Does that string?
That's right.
Yeah, one of them is here teaching juggling, and he's working with a student who already knew how to juggle, and they were juggling together, and I was able to get
They
up
have
close.
different expressions on their face.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Another arm wrestling photo, this time in the teenage category. Young woman with her glamorous hair as she was pushing hard to win. Her hair went flying behind her, and made for a nice photo. Just a little baby at a daycare center here in town, and a sweet moment, sweet little smile on her face. Another one.
Oh, yes.
Another take on an athletic event. Instead of focusing on the action, here's the reaction. And some of the players are reacting to another kid's home run, waiting for him at home plate. And no people in this shot, but just kind of a nice graphic of a series of beehives with different colors and layers of beehives. Students at a naturalization ceremony in New Haven, at the school in New Haven. And here's a little bit of technique to show motion, a real slow shutter speed, and I was following the bike rider, so the bike rider is kind of steady and in focus, but the background is sweeping by.
That is fascinating.
This is one of the new Champlain Bridge. Just, I think this was an opening ceremony. And I just happened to look up. We were all on the New York side of the bridge, and people were gathering, and I looked up, and there was this row of construction workers from the Vermont side who were passing across, coming over to the ceremony, and it struck me as a great image. Kids letting a monarch butterfly go from a class project in Shoreham.
Well, that's incredible. With all, each child has a different expression.
Yeah, and I like to get in close on things like that. Have some real intimacy with the subjects. It's just a pretty fall landscape of the college there in the distance, and some good clouds gathering. Another field day shot. We had a advertising director who always was hoping that I could get a photo that showed some of the agricultural aspects of the fair and the fun and the rides and
combined the two.
Can I get them into one photo for a cover of a guide, a field day's guidebook? And one year I think I finally pleased her a lot here with a photo of a young woman walking her cow down to be washed, and in the background the Ferris wheel. So it all came together for that photo.
That's great.
Here's some kids practicing or doing a little movement class at the college. during spring into the arts. And again, trying to get in close, get in right with them, and have a little intimacy with them, and you can really see a variety of expressions. This is at the high school football stadium, and now I'm embarrassed, I'm blanking on his name. He was the announcer for many years.
I remember the story about him.
But it was,
long time, right?
Long time, yeah.
Long time.
And so I followed him around one night during a game, and he just opened the door, and the setting sun was shining through the press box and then onto his face through the open door. So a nice golden hue there. Another field day shot. Field day generates a lot of good images.
Right.
This is the pet show, and this girl brought her pet duck.
Oh, that's
some
action.
Field hockey down in Brandon at Otter Valley, and happened to be a nice sunny fall day, so it's a nice color in the background as well. Kids tapping trees in Ferrisburg and waiting for a drip of sap to spill out. A firefighter working a barn fire. Kind of dramatic. Line of kids in Ferrisburg getting a history lesson at their Grange Hall. And a little contrast between the looming Bicentennial Hall and a mobile chicken house.
A mobile chicken house.
Yeah.
Is that still in place, or?
I think so. That's on a farm just outside of town on Route 23.
Okay.
And it moves around, goes to different fields, so the chickens all work different parts of the field. And I don't know if I've seen it lately.
So that's truly free-range chicken.
That's right.
As opposed to free-range chicken, meaning they can just walk all over the
the
barn floor as much as they want.
Yeah. So
and bump into all the other chickens.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
So I think that's a good sampling of images.
It really is.
Yeah.
So the world of photography has changed a bit.
Sure.
Can you comment on how it's changed since with all the new devices?
Right. Well, it's changed in a great way in that you can pretty much photograph anything you want in a very natural way. Used to be when you're working with film that was only so sensitive, you'd have to add flash or do certain tricks to try to get the photo you were after. Now, with capturing it digitally, and you can dial up the sensitivity of your chip that's capturing the image, and you can capture things much more naturally and use natural light, even in cases where there isn't much natural light, but there's enough. You can capture images that you couldn't before, or not in a natural way. You'd have to augment the scene with your own light. So it really frees you up. It frees you up to capture an image that you can see with your eye.
Do you have a sense that with all the improvements or all the changes in this technology, that it's drawing more people into wanting to tell stories with film?
Oh, yeah.
And
yeah,
talk a little bit about that.
Sure. I mean, everybody's phone has a pretty darn good camera in it now. And everybody's taking pictures all the time. I don't know what the numbers are, but millions and billions of photos taken every day. It means there's a little more competition out there for me. But yeah, so it's definitely, I think people are definitely using photography more than ever.
What about selfies?
What about selfies?
Yeah, what about selfies?
I prefer to stay on the other side of the camera.
Yeah,
So,
okay.
but
Yeah,
you know,
it has changed the the kind of use of a camera, right?
true.
And finding your own selfie, your own pictures, and then finding celebrities
Yeah.
and
Well, my grandfather always used to say it's always better to have a picture of person in the photograph.
okay.
Uh, I don't know that selfies are necessarily the be all and end all of that,
Right.
but it is nice to have a face in a photo.
So, did your grandfather have some other bits of wisdom like that he would share?
Oh, the classic rule of thirds in
Oh.
composition was a big thing he found important.
The thirds. So, say a little bit more about that.
Well, so you divide the frame in thirds horizontally and vertically, and it's sort of most pleasing or best to get your subject at an intersection of those lines.
Mm-hmm.
And also, if you're shooting a landscape, you don't want your horizon line to be right in the middle of the image. You want it to be either the lower third or the top third.
Mm-hmm.
Just more pleasing composition.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Do you put some of your work on YouTube or
No,
no?
no,
Okay.
no. The Addison Independent has a website that cycles through several photos every
Right.
couple times a week.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, well, I think it's been great to spend this time. Any other things you would like to share about photographs and stories?
Oh, just encourage people to get out there and keep doing it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, you heard it here. Get out there and keep doing it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's advice from one of the best in the business. And so we thank you, Trent,
Thank
for
you.
spending this time.
Yeah, it's been fun.
Okay.